In this lesson, we're going to take a look at some of the attributes used to control the mental ray spotlight. So the mental ray spotlight can really act as the equivalent to the simple Maya spotlight. Now, this is a light node that can actually be connected just like any other mental ray light. So all we have to do is take a look at our Maya light, go down into the mental ray tab, scroll underneath, and look for the light shader area. Now, this particular shader, this spotlight shader, will allow itself to be connected to any type of Maya light. However, in order to function correctly, it does need to be connected to a spotlight, because there are a few attributes in this mental ray spotlight shader that will depend on attributes up here in the Maya spotlight. So let's go to the light shader, click on this, and scroll up, and we're going to plug in the mental ray spotlight, MIB light spot. Alright, so just below this we have the area that controls the light color. So if we needed this light to be a little bit different shade. Alright, you can see how that will give our light just a little bit of a green tint to it, or whatever color we choose. Below that we have the ability to enable or disable shadows. And below that we have the control of the overall opacity of those shadows. That's called the factor. So right now with the factor set to 0, we have full opacity on these shadows. In other words, it's acting as if no light whatsoever was reaching this area. However, we can start to really kind of increase the overall transparency of these shadows by just starting to bump this factor up a little bit. I'll save this for comparison and re-render. And you can really see how that will diminish the overall intensity of these shadows. So it really tries to make these behave as if they were a little bit more transparent and allow more of this direct light to come into that area. Now below that we have the attenuation. Now once this is enabled, we can start to control the start point and the end point of the illumination. So right now, with this set to default, what this is saying is that by the time the illumination reaches 100 units, that's the point at which the illumination stops. Now if we wanted to decrease this and just illuminate within a certain area, we can begin lowering this value. Let's start by lowering this to a value of 10. And now you can see that by the time the light reaches 10 units away from its point of emission, that light will now stop, if you compare what we had before. So we can also begin to increase this just a little bit more. We can also define the point at which the light emission will actually start to decay. So if we were to have the stop point set to a value of 20, you can see how we get a fairly gradual fall off, especially back in here. So if we wanted to lower this so that the point of emission, or rather the intensity of emission, doesn't necessarily die off immediately from the light source, we can start to set this start point to a very similar value to what this is. So let's say something like 19. And now we can use this to really control exactly which areas are going to be illuminated. So at this point now the light will stay at a constant emission, or a constant intensity, until it reaches 19 units away from the point of emission. And by the time it reaches 19 units, it will start to die off. But it completely dies off by the time it reaches 20 units away. And so as a result, we get this very, very fast die off of the light. So some really, really useful effects that we do have with the stop and stop portion of the attenuation. Now our final attribute is the cone. Now this is controlling the intensity of the light from the center of our light cone to the outer areas. So right now this is a value that goes from 0 to 1. So with this set up to a value of 1, what this should say is that the light will completely die off by the time it reaches this outer cone of light. And you can see that that's really exactly what we get if you compare what we had before to what we have now. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning part of this lesson, that it's really important that we connect this mental ray spotlight to a traditional Maya spotlight. And the reason is because the overall cone angle, or the spread, is still controlled by this particular attribute. So in our renders, if we're using a mental ray spotlight, and if we want this cone of light to be increased or decreased, we have to go back to the original Maya spotlight and begin increasing or decreasing the cone angle from this point. Select the view that we want to render in. and now we're emitting from a much tighter shaft of light. So that's a look at how we can utilize and connect this metal ray spotlight.